You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest options platforms in the world. MIAX is now trading options on the SPIKES Volatility Index, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction for confident trading, all for competitive exchange fees. It's time to make a change and give yourself an edge with SPIKES. Learn more about SPIKES at www.miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution in trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Don't forget the at the start of the URL there. You can get all the good stuff we have up there, the middays, the end of days, unusual activity, all sorts of earnings, season and move and results and trades reports. You guys can sink your teeth into them pretty much all day long over there. Of course, you can get all the access to pretty much all the shows going back to the primordial ooze days of the network, which coming up in about a month will be 15 years. Good grief. We need to have some sort of palooza to celebrate that. It's kind of terrifying to say out loud. I've been doing this for 15 years. But say la vie, someone had to kick off this whole options podcast thing. So it's fun to do, fun to keep doing all these years later. Watch what the network has grown and evolved into, including, of course, on the pro side. So all you folks who want to get live stuff, as well as, of course, dive in for oddities. Later today, join myself and the rockingest of lobsters to break down the week's worth of unusual activity. Of course, you come in, if you're here this week, you got to catch Mr. Scott Nations, the creator of VolQ and Valdi and all that good stuff, author of a bunch of tomes. He came in this week to answer all of your questions. Everybody who does it has a ball and wants to come back and do it again. So it's a fun time is being had by all over there in the hot seat. If you want to learn more, theoptionsinsider.com/secret club. Just don't tell anybody. And of course, however you listen, keep hitting us up. Questions, comments, insights, pearls of wisdom. We do love to hear from all of you guys and gals out there. And let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. The MIAX guys are busy putting together a variety of new products for you guys to trade, but never fear. Doing double duty today, holding down the MIAX hot seat and also beaming in from the volatility mecca known as Maine, we have the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the program. How does it feel to be in what used to be the vol mecca of Maine that is now, I guess, maybe like, I don't know, top 8?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why the popularity went down so much. You know what happened? I think everybody with the COVID just stayed at home. They stayed at home and started doing their thing. But it's a little snowy and cold today in Maine. The clam pirates, everybody is hunkered down. Nobody is out. There are no fishermen to be seen on the water today.
You know what it was? For a long time in Maine, you were like the only guy with a computer, right? So you were searching options all day. So that just pushed you. The per capita option searching was just through the roof. Everyone was doing it, the one guy. And now, of course, you're right. Since the pandemic, people have gotten more computers in Maine, it seems like. So the per capita rate of option searching, which is what Google looks for. Whoa, excuse me. Choking on my own words there, which is what Google looks for there, is down. So I'm dying here as we keep on rolling right on into the volatility review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Vol Review. I think I'm recovered. I think I'm better. I'm not sure what it was that got stuck in my throat there, but I think it's gone. Welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was, and indeed still is, from vol trending and trading and unusual activity, all sorts of perspectives. Or Mr. Rock Lobster, I guess, should we more aptly just call this Vol Views from 2 weeks ago? Because it seems like we just dialed the Wayback Machine back 2 weeks and reset everything, pretty much.
It feels like, well, let's see. Last Friday, I think we had that. Didn't we have that spike? That was 2 Fridays ago. Was that Thanksgiving?
Yeah, 2 Friday was when we were off, so technically there was no show. But if we were around, we would be talking about a lot of levels like this, and then they started spiking beyond this, obviously. But yeah, it was crazy town. Let me just set the stage for you listeners here coming into Showtime. By the way, you guys still have time to, I think it's still live. If you go over to options right now, I know you guys were fighting out fast and furious there. We asked you 2 weeks ago, is VIX going to close above or below 20? We all know how that played out. This week, it's still contentious. You got 43 minutes left, listeners. So pretty much the duration of this show to get in there, make your voice heard. Will it happen? Will we dance this week? Will we close below the 20 handle? And man, it is fast and furious right now. About 49% to 51%, Mr. Rock Lobster. So it's literally as close as it pretty much could be within the margin of error of Twitter out there. So if you have a viewpoint, get out there. By the way, the vol products, let's get to those. Because they are all right now at least below the 20 handle. So if we stay right here for the rest of the show and through the rest of the day, we know where we're going to end up. But again, vol is a fickle beast. Just wait 5 minutes if you don't like where you're hanging out right now. Coming into the start of the show, we had spikes at 19 3/4. That's down a whopping 12 points. Yes, 12 from our last show, listeners. So vol giveth, vol taketh away. 19.5 is where we were when we kicked off the show out there in VIX land, listeners. That puts us down about 11 1/4 points from this time last week. So all that vol that got exploding in the first week and we thought was going to come crashing out didn't really come crashing out. We saw those multiple sell-offs that kept vol elevated through the end of the week. Then we come into this week, of course, and look out below from a vol perspective. It's been just annihilation. VVIX down a whopping 32 points. Back down to 116 from this. I mean, this is crazy town here, but that's what we got here. We're dialing the Wayback Machine all the way back to the heady days before anyone had ever heard of Omicron. So dare I say 2 weeks in a day. And that's what we're looking at from vol levels out there right now. In fact, still a little elevated from there, but I think we were in a 15, closer to a 15, 16 handle before then, but still intriguing stuff. The Viking, aka V-Spikes, coming into Showtime, also down about almost 30 points, about 29 points from this time last week. So it was at about a 163.5. By the way, a bunch of you are asking where to get it, including we got Miracle Man here. I'll just bump this one up really quickly. Miracle Man wants to know, where do I find the V-Spikes/Viking? Well, yeah, it's still a little hard to find. It's interesting. It's not propagating through a lot of the major systems that even we use here. If you type in the ticker, which, by the way, the ticker listeners is V-Spike, VSPKE. You type that into any of your analytics platforms, chances are you're not going to find it. We're still having a hard time. It's not really propagating. Even though it is out there in Opera. I was talking to Tom about this last week after the show. He said it should be out there. It's in Opera, but for some reason, there's a bottleneck in getting it out there. But where you can find it, if you go to Simon's site, T3 Index, they list all their indices there. So click on the indices tab, and then you'll see spikes. Click on that, and then you see a bunch of indices there. You see spikes. You'll see their 7-day spikes, SPY, Smile, and also V-Spikes. You can find it right there. So I know it's not ideal. It's not the easiest way to find it. But for everyone who wants to kind of compare and contrast VVIX to V-Spikes, a.k.a. the Viking, there you go. That's how you find it. All right, Mr. Rock Lobster, a lot of table setting here. What's been lighting up your tape as we pretty much set the vol dial back to 2 weeks and a day ago, sir?
I like that. We set the vol by, oh my gosh, I'm just looking at some 20 puts where some of the pit crazies here were talking about buying a bunch of puts in VXX right now. So I think part of this is the inflation, no inflation, the high, low, blah, whatever. And at least from my view right now, what I would say is, hey, you have it feels like they're kind of calling the inflation top here today because some of the oil prices are a little lower and all that kind of stuff, which would give the Fed a case for, doing their taper thing and getting out of the business of propping everything up. And from a volatility point of view, I think that's I don't know how much more bullish the market can be since everything is very close to its all-time highs. But that I think is bearish volatility. I'm just watching all my puts start to jump a little bit here, and starting to put some, I think, new VXX lows into the potential radar screen here going into Christmas. So, we got the FOMC next week. I'm at this point, the Fed does. Everybody's assuming the Fed is going to, do something as far as vol goes, be aggressive or somewhat aggressive in trying to combat inflation, and they're expecting it now. And the market seems to be okay with that, from what I can tell. So, do we sit here and anyway, that's what I see, at least at this point. I don't see anything different than that on that score. So, we're at least from this point of view right now, we're now starting to get back to some recent volatility lows again. Like you said, reset the clock. Everybody was freaked out on this Omicron. You got the governor of New York today has caused a little sell-off in the SPX. She's going to make everybody mask. Everybody's going to mask now. So, again, I won't go on about all this stuff, but we're not, again, the only reaction that the market doesn't like is overreaction. And right now there is some reaction, just not what I would say overreaction from the government, enough to kind of mess up economic activity. So, since we're not seeing that yet, I hope it does not happen. But as long as it doesn't, I think that's pretty. I think overall that's bearish vol. So that's what this short is. It's bearish vol. So it's not going to surprise me to see lower volatility and potentially, very low VXX prices coming into next week. So for the listeners out there, I did some vol prognosticating. So just using some of the tools and options. So if VIX actually trades a 15, I would estimate VXX in this cycle could trade as low as 17.5. and that is with estimating about a 19 future for January. Now, right now it's 22.46, so that's 3.5 points down. You're like, no way, Andrew, that can't happen. But you're in the business of estimating where vol could go, so you got to know how low it could go to see what kind of puts you want to buy, or juice you want to sell, however you want to do it. So that's what I would say would be kind of the dead low. What's amazing, UVXY would be 1147.
You'll have to reverse split again.
I know, exactly.
Jesus.
That's what I thought. So for listeners, and that would still be a relatively healthy, $4 over cash. So, I don't think I think 15 is, not really realistic. We haven't been able to hold that level, but if you do get that, if you get no more Omicron news and you do get, like what I would call Fed again, starting to, Fed's going to set the table for the next 6 to 9 months, 10, 12 months. I'm just going to, that has historically this year brought us to the 16 handle or lower in VIX, even though it might stay there for a day or two. It does bring us to that lower level before some other problem creeps up, right? Because the inflation thing started coming out of nowhere as well. Everybody thought it was bad, but then it got kind of worse. So I think that's how I would say, if you're trying to set the vol table for the next week, that is myself, how I'm positioned, looking for, I got a little upside, it's kicking around, but definitely leaning short into all of this for next week. And we'll see what happens. But you do have a shot now that, like those 18.5 puts, or, I'm starting looking at the December 23 cycle, like 19 puts for a quarter, 18.5 puts for 14 cents in VXX. Like that stuff is kind of cheap. There is a little bit of activity. We'll talk about, in the activity realm, but you're rolling into the holiday. You've got this Fed thing coming out, Apple just keeps going up and up and up. Like, I don't know. There is the potential for the recipe. A lot of times things, especially with volatility, where, just be careful what you wish for, because things happen so fast. So I think there's definitely ample opportunity or potential for that to happen. So anyway, that's my story with vol right now. So we have been doing some in the option pit, a little downside prognosticating. Mark went and bought a bunch of 17 puts in VIX for 15 cents yesterday. So for the December cycle, and remember, December expiration is not next week; it's the following week for VIX. So, like I said, like all of these, that extra 4 or 5 days could make a real big difference in the settlement value of VIX. Again, I'm assuming we settle lower, given what I see right now, but that extra 5 days is just for all the listeners out there. You want to be mindful of that. It's also opportunity. The last handle or two in VIX at this point in the cycle is big relative percentage wise. The 18, 19, 20 puts could actually be worth something this cycle. So keep that in mind as you move forward.
This was an interesting period here because, throughout most of the year, we've had little short spikes, pun intended. And how many times have we joked on this show, Andrew, that you had minutes, maybe hours, right? If you had upside calls, for example, you had to dump them very quickly. If there was a bid there, you had to hit it because you maybe had an hour and that was it. Then the turnaround would come in. This was one of the longer lived spikes we saw in vol throughout this year. I mean, it's funny. I figured I gave myself, when all this spike started happening, but keep throwing spike out there, pun intended. When all this, explosion of Omicron, I gave myself about 11 days. I'll fade some, but I'll go out a little farther. I'll go over a week. I figure 10, 11 days is pretty safe. Load up on some downside around the 20 strike in VIX. Nope, it was actually a couple of days beyond that. You needed to have full time here. So yeah, it's been interesting to watch just how long this spike lasted. I mean, when's the last time we had a full real 2-week cycle of a higher vol before it finally got squeezed out, Mr. Rock Lobster?
I can't think. I mean, it's been a while, like a couple of months, maybe 3, like summertime. But especially like going to 30 twice or close to 30 twice. Again, you only have one day. And even in the spike yesterday, I was getting rid of some upside. It was actually a good day to trade vol a little bit. So I did get rid of some upside yesterday because, it got rebid. So I didn't think that was terrible. So I think that's what we have. So like on a day like today, you're going into the weekend, like how much, I want to hold a little bit of my upside, but I'll probably be getting rid of it into the FOMC, I would assume. But it was definitely tradable. And there's some opportunity for once to trade the vol, which is nice. But I'm looking right now at the last spike we had that was sustained. And I'm going to say we just had like that. Yeah. Like we haven't had anything close to this probably since the beginning of the year. We had a mini tantrum in May and a mini one in September. So, we had a couple of runs to the mid-20s, but nothing with this kind of duration, I would say, since February of this year. When you remember we had that huge blow up in all of those tech stocks, that was when meme mania was at full tilt. And of course, a lot of those stocks are down 50, 60, 70% from there, the SPACs and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we haven't seen anything since, and as we go right now, yeah, vol has a little bit of I think 15 is possible. I think 15 is possible in the December cycle for VIX right now. So weirder things have happened, right? Even if you think about it, right? Even a 15 or 16 vol not very long ago was still pretty high vol, like relative for how VIX operates now. In the COVID era and all this kind of Fed shenanigans, it doesn't quite work that way. But I still think it's a reachable bottom in the near term. But yeah, it has been quite a while since we saw anything like that.
Yes, fascinating stuff here. Look out really in the chat. We have some listeners saying that Thinkorswim has spikes. Yeah, spikes should be widely available. You should be able to find spikes on just about every major brokerage platform. So you can find the index, you can find the options on it. You could trade those everywhere. That shouldn't be the issue. The issue I was referring to earlier was the VVIX flavor of spike, which is VSpike. That's the index that is still having a hard time getting out there and propagating. That's VSPKE. But yeah, you should be able to find spike on any major brokerage platform. If you can't, for some reason, if you can't trade spikes options, you're having a hard time with those, then by all means, reach out to us or reach out to the guys at MyX. They'll get it, but it should be at this point. I've yet to encounter a major brokerage platform that doesn't have spikes at this point. All right, let's keep on rolling out some other indicators. A lot of people love their skew. Skew is still frothy, still beefy to the downside there. It's down about 2 points from our last show. If you're looking at it just through the lens of the skew indicator, which is my skew index, which is my least favorite indicator out there. It's at about a 149.60. It's down about 2 points from where it was. We had about a 151 and change this time last week. Again, if you want more information on all things skew, again, check out our TWIFO show or look out those reports for yourselves. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO, and pull up whatever index you want. You can pull up NASDAQ, you can pull up S&P, small caps, whatever floats your boat. They're all there. And then you can look at the skew for yourselves. And even more importantly, you can look at it from a call wing and put wing separate perspective, which is great. And it's all free. You can't beat the price. So if you have any questions about that, if you did that, you pulled up most of these major indices right now, you're going to see 20 plus, maybe even 30% premiums to the put wings in a lot of these indexes. So that's something to bear in mind if you're thinking about, hey, I really need to start loading up on some protection. I'm concerned about these levels. You're going to be paying a hell of a lot for that. In fact, I encourage you, if you haven't done so already, check out, if you're subscribed to the full network, A, if you're not subscribed to the full network, you're listening to this, what the hell are you doing? You're missing out on a ton of stuff. So A, go subscribe to the full network right away. B, go check out the episode of the Advisor's Option I did very recently with Mr. Matt from ORAD. So we did a whole episode about ways to pay for puts, including some that are maybe outside the box a little bit that you haven't thought of. And there were some ones we threw in there that he termed devious that were pretty interesting. And I encourage you to check that out. The standard stuff's there, your out-of-money puts and put spreads and collars, but then we take it up a notch and it gets a little outside the box. It's pretty fun. So if you want to look at ways that you can maybe get outside some of this skew and still get some interesting protection, the most recent episode of the Advisor's Option is your way to go. As we keep on rolling, let's go on into the land of the futures to see what's lighting it up out there. And like I said, it's like we just took the freaking dial and just dialed it back 2 weeks in a day. It's pretty much all back to around those levels. We were at, we were up about 8.5, 9 points this time last week, and we were down 8.5 in the D's future, 8.6 to be precise, when we kicked off the show. The Jan future was up about 6 points last week. It's down 6 points this week. So it's like, again, we just reset the clock a few weeks out there. Mr. Rock Lobster, anything catching your eye in the ever-evolving volatility futures term structure, sir?
Well, I think what we have for the first Friday in a while, since over the last 2 weeks, I think it's the first Friday we have had a term structure where everything is what I would call sort of normalish. The December cycle is flipping over into about a normal, what I would call like a historical norm for this time in the cycle. How much the future is over. So like the forward vols are kind of normalizing, kind of more sleepy curve where the market's expecting realized vol to come down. So I see. So again, so for listeners, so a way to like kind of look at sort of targeting VIX is like where can vol go? So the 9-day VIX is now down to 1663. That's down 4 points in 2 days. There's 5 or 6 points in 2 days. So it's quite a drop in the short-term VIX. So like demonstrable, like people just getting the hell out of the way of the short-term vol. So that will start to pull the rest of vol down with it like a giant vacuum cleaner, right? Because as the liquidity provider starts to consume more short-term options, if people get bold again and start selling options, the liquidity providers pick up tons of gamma on those weeklies, and they don't need to charge a lot for. Well, they can start. VIX is going to start coming down because they're going to start hitting bids that are lying around. So it's just like we used to do. You know, they start selling us a lot of front month. You're not going to leave the back month vol super high. That stuff is all going to start coming down. And that's kind of what's going on in the SPX. I don't trade it anymore, but I do watch all the curves every day. So I was in there for long enough to know that when the vol's coming down, somebody's selling something. So at least short-term vol's coming in. Curve is starting to normalize, which is like hugely bearish for the vol products like VXX and UVXY. Just, you know, things don't look good for them. We might get a little bit of a brief stop before the Fed says whatever they're going to say, another binary event situation. And then who knows where we are next week. So the curve is normalizing and showing a normal, like, again, like kind of like a little more sleepy action for next week for the first time in 3 weeks, where like everything's like all the ducks are in a line. Like VIX is a little lower than the D's, which is a little lower than the Jan, a little lower. So you have kind of normalizing contango. And also for listeners to get, so it doesn't mean VIX can't go up, but in order to get the vol products to move now, because cash has dropped so much, you actually need, you know, like the SPX needs to move now. So we'll need a pretty good sized move in SPX to get vol moving again and get those vol products moving again in order to sort of upset the apple cart. So like I just say everything right now just looks, it looks bearish. It just looks bearish vol. And that's how things start to look after a while. And it would not surprise me if we saw an 18 handle. I guess we looked yesterday at when we were on the option block. And I thought we would stay at around a 20. I was surprised that we're dropping below right now. So I think I picked 20.01, I believe, was my number. And you guys are a little underneath. So
you tried to get clever, but once again, vol is more clever, sir.
So anyway, I mean, that's I'm not going to complain about it. I just thought we would see more of this last week, but I think what, at least from a vol point of view, is the market is accepting that rates are going to we are going to start to normalize. Other countries might not, but the U.S. is, at least from what you see, all the curves and everything is kind of showing, is that the U.S. will start to raise rates and stop all this silly accommodation crap and just get back to business, so to speak.
Let's get back to vol business here. Let's kick it off here with the vol options now. Spikes, top positions looking pretty similar to what we saw last time here. We saw that pretty much three-way, the D's 21 puts versus the 24-30 vertical. Each of those up for about 1,600. So that's pretty much still dominating the tape out there in Spikes land. The VIX tape today, we had a decent week out there. Not exactly blowing the doors off today. Actually, before I even get to that, Mr. Rocklofts, you're just talking about maybe vol turning bearish. We always break down here when we talk about VIX, the top 10, the big, the sizable, the meaty positions that are open in VIX right now. And it's always maybe 50-50 puts to calls or 60-40 calls to puts or something, maybe 70-30. Sometimes things get crazy. This week, sir, take a guess what the top 10 is in terms of puts over calls.
You mean the ratio?
Yes. How many calls are in the top 10 versus how many puts?
Oh, yeah. For this week, I'm going to say I'm going to go 6 puts to 4 calls.
That would be a normal week. That'd be a good guess. No, all puts, 100%, 10 for 10. I don't know the last time that we've seen that on this show. So that goes back to what you were just saying. Vol maybe turning bearish, you think? Yeah. There's not a call to be found in the top 10 right now in VIX. Think about that. This is VIX we're talking about. This is the product that usually, all things being equal, should be trading all calls all the time. And the fact that you can't even find one in the top 10, that's saying something, listeners. Right now, let's say about 304,000 contracts on the tape. VIX has been on a tear the last couple of weeks from a volume perspective. The ADV is up. It's threatening 700K right now, 692,000. It was up about 130 or so thousand last week. It's up another 156,000 this thing. This thing is on fire. It was threatening to break 400K not that long ago. So we're up almost 300,000 in ADV just in the past couple of weeks. Was that going to stay? I don't know. Given today's number, maybe not so much, but still impressive. Up 156,000 contracts, the ADV this week, 692,000. Can't remember the last time we had the ADV that high, probably in the depth of the pandemic there. But outside of that, it's been a while. Let's go out to that top 10 I just mentioned earlier. Pretty much your put palooza out here. Cost you 128,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land right now. That gets you to our first of 10 puts. These are all pretty much, a couple of jam, pretty much all D's. D's 22 puts, number 10. Number 9, $1.36, D's 21 puts. Number 8, $1.54 of the D's 16 puts. Number 7, $1.58 of the D's 15 puts. Number 6, also $1.58 of the D's 19 puts. Number 5, our first of 2 Jans. We got the Jan 18 puts for 173,000. Number 4, $1.74 of the Jan 19 puts. Number 3, back to D's, 181,000 of the D's 20 puts. Number 2, 213,000 of the D's 17 puts. And number 1 with a bullet out there in VIX land right now, 290,000 of the D's 18 puts. Total of about 8.8 million contracts open. Talking still net in the total OI, it's more calls. This is about a little over 5 million versus about 3.7 million for the puts. But still, it's impressive. I can't remember the last time we saw all puts in the top 10. Usually there's at least one call to be found out there. Let's go out to the week, see what we had on the tape this week. We had a couple of days with the coveted M handle. We'll get to those. It's not today, obviously. Only 306,000 contracts on the tape right now. The most active contracts today, the D's 18 puts, 36,000 of those, followed by 26,000 of the Jan 19 puts. Number 3, 14,000 of the D's 25 calls. So there's a call out there today. Number 4, 13,000 of the D's 20 puts. And number 5 out there, 12,500 of the December 45 calls. Who's slinging those out there? Interesting choice. Yesterday, 453,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract yesterday, the D's 60s, 6 O's, 34,000 of those, followed by 25,000 for number 2 of the D's 22 puts. Number 3, 19,000 of the June 75s. Interesting. Number 4, 18,400 of the D's 18 puts. Number 5, 18,000 of the December 21 puts. Wednesday, a little bit more paper on the tape, 641,000 contracts. The number 1 most active contract on Wednesday, the June 70s, 7-0, 50,000 pretty much exactly of those bad boys going up, followed by number 2, 50,000 as well of the Feb 65s. Could there possibly have been a roll from the Feb to the June? I'll have to dig into that while Mr. Rock Lobster is talking. See exactly what went up there on Wednesday. Number 3, about 40,000 of the D17 puts. Number 4, 31,000 of the D16 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, just a tick under 30,000 of the D20 puts. Tuesday, our first, or really in order of the week, would have been our second M-handle day. 1.1 million contracts going up on Tuesday. The big dog on Tuesday, 109,000 of the December 19 puts. Number 2, 102,000 of the D's 18 puts. Number 3, 103,000 of December 20 puts. You see where I'm going here. Number 4, 45,000 of the December 22 puts. And rounding out the top 5 on a pretty active day, 37,000 of the December 21 puts. And then Monday, close to it, 1.06 million. So right behind it. The big dog on Monday, about 60,000 of the Jan 75 calls, followed by number 2, 55,000 of the Jan 19 puts. Number 3, 50,000 of the June 70s. Again, back to that interesting strike. Number 4, 37,000 of the December 35 calls. They make the 35 seem comparatively very reasonable. Number 5, 35,000 as well of the Jan 18 puts. Mr. Rock Lobster, we kind of had paper all over the place, mostly puts, as you would imagine, but there were a few, shall we say, interesting call strikes going up this week as well. Any of this paper catch your eye while I dig into what went up on Wednesday, sir?
Like I said, we were mostly focused on puts all week. Just, once you had that kind of Friday ball fail, you have that serious spike, and then you wait coming Monday, and everybody's like, okay, there was nothing to see here. So we have noticed, we did notice a lot of activity, and we covered it a couple times this week along, like 18, 19, 20 puts, like stuff that looked not really good on Friday a week ago. So we did notice a lot of that paper. So a lot of the pit crazies, they were buying some puts, and we're sitting on some of the ones that we own, seeing we scrape a couple more bucks out of them.
And I was right. That was a spread. 50,000 of the June 70, Feb 65 call spreads went up on Wednesday for even money. They did it for 80 cents on each. It's hard to tell. There's enough OI. I know there was a ton of OI on the 65s. Apparently there was enough on the 70s as well to obscure whether this is opening or not. It has the whiff of a roll, sir. That's an interesting choice. You're rolling your Feb 65s now, and you're rolling them out to June 70s. Is that your trade for the week, Mr. Rock Lobster?
Rolling your 65s to the June 75s? That's your Wednesday trade?
Feb 65s to the June 70s.
Yes. A little 50,000 lot spread. What was the net cost on that trade? Because
they did it for nothing. They did it for 80 cents on each. They did it for even money.
So I don't know if that's I don't know if that's 50 Cent, because that's not his MO. Interesting though, when you see like 50 Cent has not been active in the market, if you've noticed lately. I guess he bought a small island or something.
I was going to say, he's either retired to his island or he blew out on his credit portfolio, one or the other, after the last pop.
Well, what's funny is the Fed did such a good job of shoring up credit. As long as they had margin, he survived, I would assume, right? And then he pocketed all the dough he made in VIX. Probably the greatest VIX trade that I can think of. Not many people can buy a contract for 50 cents and write it for $46 or whatever he wrote it to. It was pretty phenomenal. If it's indeed a he, I believe it was a he. It turned out to be. So, I think those margin spreads aren't bad for, people they're looking to buy like some cheap protection, and they're just kind of, they thinking that, okay, the Feb won't happen, or we won't see a 65 Feb, and I'll have some 370s. So that also is a little contango trade, depending. That's probably some vol fund or something trying to ride the contango lower. I guess there's some sort of, somebody's doing some wonky math thing with the vol that lets them, that gives them that's some sort of optimum trade. I don't get them personally just because you kind of sit on it, you hold it, and then what do you do with it over a period of time? Like I can't really think of how to manage it. You have it. You've got like the problem with those spreads is that if you have any kind of like short-term vol pop, that short term just can blow up all out of sight. So when you do them kind of volume neutral, it has a potentially very short delta that's kind of embedded in the trade that doesn't show its ugly head until the market does something goofy. So they're not my favorite type of trade right now, but it could look good, right? It could be a little curve flattener and they're going to be taking it off. So it is possible they could get out of that trade relatively easy once, everything, if they traded it Wednesday, there was some relative flatness and they could be taking that off maybe in a week. So that's a possibility as well. Things could move a little more contango shape. They normalize and they just flip out of the spread for, 20 cents or 30 cents or something like that, which is not bad 50,000 times, I guess.
There are worse things. There are definitely worse things, but you're right. That 50-cent trade does go down in the vol annals as what they technically call a good one.
That's an all-time.
That was a good do, as they used to say on the old SIBO. Let's go on out here to VXX. Let's see if that's a good do as well. Again, you kind of just resetting the vol dial back a couple of weeks, listeners, because we were up about 7-8 points last week, down about 7 this week, down back to about a 21 and change. It was 21 exactly when we kicked off the show. It's a little bit off the 21 handle now. Good for 250,000 contracts today. That's a pretty active day in VXX. That ADV is also ticked up. It's up to about 306,000. It's up about 37,000 contracts from last show. So spoiler alert, all the vol complex is seeing a lot more vol and volume, really, these days. Top 10 out here. Let's go really quickly. Let's see. We are at 90-10 puts to calls in VXX. So there is one call trader still in VXX, Mr. Rock Lobster. But unlike VIX, where nobody wants to touch a call apparently anymore. But in the top 10 in VXX, there is one call to be found. Number 10, 18,000 of the Jan. These are there's still VXX1 pre-split adjusted here. That's the only one here, and that's number 10, 18,000 of the Jan 12 puts. Number 9, 18,000 as well of the Jan regular VXX 20 puts. Number 8, 18K as well, the DEES 21 puts. Number 7, almost 19,000 of the Jan 21 puts. Number 6, 19,800 of the DEES 22 puts. Number 5, 22K of the DEES 18 puts. And let's see, these are, unless I say otherwise, they're all expiring regular monthly. Number 4, 29,000 of the Jan 22 puts. Number 3, 32K of the DEES 19 puts. Number 2, our first and only call in the top 10 this week, 38,000 of the DEES 30s. And rounding out the top 10 this week, 53,000 of the DEES 20 puts for the number 1 spot. Today, the most active contract are the December 10th, so obviously going out today, 21.5 calls. That's pretty close to where we're hanging out right now, almost 15,000 of those on the tape, followed by the regular DEES monthly 20 puts, 12,000 of those. Number 3, we got the 21 puts going out today, about 11,000 of those. Number 4, the 21 calls also going out today for about 11,000 of those. And number 5, about 10,000 of the 22 calls also going out today. So a lot of near-dated paper, as you would expect. Mr. Rock Lobster, anything catching your eye in VXX land this week, sir?
Just same, I would say the same thing as far as paper goes. Just all of a sudden, I'm looking at the volume here in VXX puts, right? So you've got volumes picking up for next week on the 19 puts, starting to grow a lot. Huge volume on the 20 puts for next week. Huge volume on solid volume on the 19 and a half puts for December 23 cycle. Those are all like the good prices in VXX. You get those little tiny puts that are below, 35, 40 cents, and they grow to double or triple in size sometimes when you get that move down to the 16 handle. So lots of good, tasty puts to purchase. So one thing I didn't see is I didn't see a lot of call volume, to be honest. So I guess when you see VXX and you have 9 out of 10 are all puts, that's what are you going to say with that? 9 out of 10 puts.
Watch out below. That's what you say
yes.
in that one. UVXY, same deal. Listeners also getting annihilated. Back down to where it was a couple of weeks ago. Just resetting the vol dial out there. Down a little over 8 handles, about 820 coming into the start of the show. We was at about a 1530 when we kicked off the show. The ADV is at exactly 200K. It's up about 11,000 from this time last week. And today, so far, about 184,000 contracts on the tape. So decent paper. In terms of, let's see, what do we got out here this week? UVXY, a little bit of a different beast. We've got, looks like it's a little more calls to be found out there. Still looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 60-40 calls over puts in UVXY, which is a little surprising. Let's do a real quick top 5 because we've got to get rolling here. Number 5, 6,000 of the D15 puts. Number 4, 6,500 of the D16 puts going out today in the weeklies. Number 3, also expiring today, 9,500 of the D15 puts. Number 2, again, all the rest of it is expiring today. We got 11,500 of the 16 calls and about 15,000 of the 15 half calls all going out today. In terms of the top trades today, we've got 19,000 of the 15 halves going out today. That's our big dog out there today, which again is right around where we're hanging out there, so not surprising. Number 2, about 14,000 of the 16 calls, also expiring today. Number 3, 10,000 of the 15 puts, also going the way of the dodo today. Number 4, about 7,600 of the 15 calls expiring next week. And rounding out the top 5 here, we got about 7,500 of the 14 half puts going the way of the dodo today. Mr. Rock Lobster, it has been impressive to watch the meltdown in UVXY this week. Anything catching your eye, sir?
I'm actually surprised there was call volume here, and my guess is that they're selling them.
I would hope, yes, that given what we saw this week, that buying those is a rough trade.
Right, like they're the 16.5, 15s. I know there's a lot of guys on Twitter that sell like these controlled strangles in UVXY, like they sell the call spread and the put. Just when that vol starts to come in a little bit. So it's a trade they like to do, which works, I think, very well as long as people can deal with it. And I look at some of these, like when you see the 16.5 and the 15 volume, you would assume there are some sellers, some kind of controlled sellers, or some people sell it naked. I'm pretty much too old to do that. I don't want to start over again. So I don't do a lot of naked selling. Actually, I could say I do no naked selling in UVXY personally. I don't need that kind of aggravation, but I think somebody must have been selling something, because also you look at vol and the products have just got pretty annihilated over the last week. Just a real solid thumping overall. So you just assume that you have like the market's only up 0.5% today. We don't have any kind of 3% silly rally. Maybe things might finally getting a little tired, which is possible. It's only been about a year of crazy and 20% gains in the SPX. So maybe we do settle down into Christmas. It's certainly possible.
Indeed. Know what else is possible is some awesome questions from you folks. Let's get to it. A little bit of the old volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, let's get to it. A lot of trade ideas are flying fast and furious there in the chat. Interesting ones. Oh, your buddy Luigi's back, Mr. Rock Lobster. He's got some. Let's say he's got an iron fly in UVXY, $5 iron fly. He says it's around the 17 strike. Says looking for. Oh, he says he just took it off for 221. Well, good for you there, Mr. Luigi. UVXY was an interesting beast this week, Mr. Rock Lobster. I got caught getting a little greedy. I had a fun 19 half, 17 half, I think 15. Those are my strikes I had on the fly to the downside. And you've got kind of a fun spec. I put it on pretty much for nothing. I figured if the meltdown was going to kick in, you were going to see it kick in UVXY. And beginning of this week, Andrew, I think it was around Monday, I was looking at that fly. I was like, oh, a lot of it has come in quite a bit. And usually when I have these flies on and you have the short leg that erodes pretty aggressively for you, I usually make a point of taking it off because that's kind of what you want to have happen. Then you let the other long legs see if they can kick in to work for you at a much reduced rate. And on Monday, I was looking at, I think there was a 17 half puts that were short, and they were trading for like around a dime, maybe 12 cents. And I was like, I should probably take those off. Those look pretty good. And, you get busy with shows and everything else, and I just didn't do it for whatever reason. And, that period was short-lived in UVXY. And when I went back to look to take them off again later, Mr. Rock Lobster, guess what they were trading?
Much higher.
$1. They were trading over $1. Yeah. The UVXY just melted down like that. And I still got the fly off for decent levels, but I was like, man, the one freaking time that I don't follow my own rules, right, and don't take off that short leg when I can, when the getting's good, is when it comes back to bite me. See the prices I pay listeners for doing shows for you folks. I miss out on all sorts of good stuff here or there. Oh, Luigi's also got a ratio put fly. He looks like he's going big here. He's got the short 25, long 3. So 1x3 of the 20 put spread in VIX right now, going out on the 21st. So out there in the monthlies. We always talk ratios to the upside. We haven't really talked a lot of ratios to the downside of late, though, of course, earlier this week might have been the time to have one on. What do you think about a 1x3, 25x20 put spread in VIX right now, Mr. Rock Lobster?
20 by, so he's doing 1x3.
He's short 1, long 3, 25x20 in the regular monthly VIX contract puts.
Oh, he's short 1, long 3. Yeah, because if you target, let's see, so if you target 20, if you're targeting 2016, that might work. That would pay you $1,200. So it would net you what, $300? It could work. It could work. It would also depends on what price you put it on. If you put it on for a credit. So when you do a ratio, when you have a ratio back spread, you're looking at a price way beyond wherever your long strikes are. So it could work at a 16.
He did not. They put it on for a debit. That's the one part I didn't tell you because I knew you weren't going to like that. He put it on for a debit. Yeah, I knew once I said that your optimism was going to fade a little bit.
It's a tiny debit, but it's harder for them. It's harder for them to pay. Like it could, like if he has 15, he'll have like a bit of he'll have a home run ski. Just depends on how much he paid for it, because there's a little margin of error there on the trade where, if he gets if he has a 17 settle, that's like he makes $100. So I'm not saying it can't work, but I think they make a nice way to buy those extra contracts when the vol is fat, and you can get a lot for that upside put that you sell because the VIX skew is inverted. So your 25 put has a much higher vol than your 20 puts. They can work. But he's going to need a run to 16 handle to make it.
Yeah, I don't like paying for that. If you're going to have to pay for it, maybe you dial the ratio back a little bit so you can do it maybe for even money then or something. Yeah, because paying a big debit for that, I think you paid 60 cents, he says. You're just starting off in the hole on this trade, and that's a trade you need to have a little bit of runway to get going for you there. If you're already in the hole, it makes it a little bit more challenging. Speaking of in the hole, let's see how we're looking here in the tail minutes here, the final minutes of our hot, fast and furious. Oh, it just flipped, Mr. Rock Lobster. I knew it in the last minutes. We got 3 minutes left. So the closing minutes of our fast and furious poll, Mr. Rock Lobster. It just flipped below 20, 51.3%, and above 20, 48.8%. I'm guessing the rounding on Twitter is weird because that doesn't add up to 100. But still, interesting stuff here. Yeah, so we're pretty much neck and neck. 3 minutes left. Looks like we're just barely going to make it. Watch, we'll below 20, we'll win Mr. Rock Lobster, and then bam, VIX is going to pop to like 25 right by the end of the day. And just closed. So the final votes, 51.3% for below 20. So there we go, listeners. Fast and furious, hot live Twitter poll question of the week. Play-by-play here. So are you going to be right? Is that where we're going to hang out for the rest of the day even? We shall find out as we keep on rolling. It's time to do the old vol prognostication game. It is time for the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crystal Ball, the portion of the show where we do just that. We open up the crystal ball and attempt to peer into the future. See what the vol gods hold in store for us listeners. Coming into the end of the show, we're seeing spikes actually kind of hold firm. It was at a 19 3/4 when we kicked off the show, and it's about a 1977 right now. So spikes is actually staying firm throughout most of the show as VIX is kind of giving it up a little bit. VIX, I do believe, was at about a 19. Yeah, it was about a 19.5 when we kicked off the show, and it's right around 19 1/4 right now. So VIX giving up a little bit. Spikes managing to hold firm. And spoiler alert, nobody had a teen handle, at least for our panelists last week on the show. It was myself and the Greasy Meatball and Mr. Tom Jark from My Axe. And let's see, Meatball was in Crazy Town. He was at a 41. So spoiler alert, no 40 handle this week. Mr. Tom was at 26. He was more reasonable. I was at a 27 1/4. I was feeling erosion, but perhaps not quite as aggressive as we ended up seeing. As again, broke through the 20 handle this week. So intriguing stuff out here. We had a bunch of listeners kind of all over the place. Most of them in the 20 handle, some in the 30 handle, 32, 27, 35. Options Queen, you were feeling your vol this week. Wow. Looks like Unlimited 24, Frank 28, Nichols 28, 20. A lot of 20 handles. I don't see it. Only teen handle I see is Munster. That must be a new name. I like that. 1780. So no joy, looks like, for anybody. And all of the many submissions we got this week, nobody had a round 19 1/4 to 19 1/2 level, or even really a 19 handle that I could see here. So yeah, everyone was kind of taken aback by perhaps the aggressive nature, how quickly we dialed the dial back to a little over 2 weeks ago. So Mr. Meatball, I should say Mr. Rock Lobster, I apologize. Mr. Rock Lobster, that means there are no winners for this week. So that means you get the pride of place. Tell you what, I will be so nice. I will allow you to choose. Do you want to go first or go last, sir?
I will go first because I'm going to go out. There's going to be so much room in this market that you're going to have plenty of time to swim. But you'll scum me anyway, but I'll do it. I'm going to say $15.99 for Friday.
All right. So you can't blame me. I gave you the chance to go last. You always complain that I'm scumming you. So I gave you the chance to scum me, and you chose not to take it. So let the record reflect that, Your Honor. That's okay. $15.99, you said?
Yes, sir.
$15.99. All right. Interesting. That could easily come to pass. We could even have a flirtation with 30 in between now and then. Who knows? All kinds of craziness afoot. I think I'm looking at a little bit less vol as well. I was thinking a low 16 handle already. I will be charitable. I will give you a little bit more room. I was going to say 16 1/4. I'll bump myself up to 16.35. How's that? I'll give you another 1/10 of a point wiggle room. Watch it come out at 16 1/4 exactly. This time next week. So there we go. We got Mr. Meatball, $15.99. I'm feeling a little bit lower as well. Not quite as low as him at a 16.35. Our chat's all over the place. 18.65, 19.5. So they're feeling higher. 17 1/4. Also buying some verticals in UVXY. 16.18. Interesting. We were just talking about buying calls. It's an interesting strategy right now, upside in UVXY. It doesn't last too long. At least you got a spread on against it. Hey, we could see a pop. It could work. I'm not saying it can't. It's a challenging road to go down these days, owning any upside in UVXY. We do see a lot of calls lighting it up in UVXY these days, but if you look at the OI and look at the trading, most of those are opening sales out there. It's challenging to make long upside in UVXY payout. All right. We've been gassing on. We got to get the heck out of Dodge here. But if you need more in your lives, don't worry. We'll be back in exactly an hour to break down the week that was. Unusual activity, a lot of weirdness afoot out there again this week. We're going to break it all down for you, and a whole bunch more on options oddities coming up in exactly an hour. If you're listening to this after the fact, you'll probably be too late to join us for oddities today. But if you want to join us for next week, then, of course, go to theoptionsinsider.com/pro or /secret club. Either of those will get you to the place where you can go to get the admission pass, get past the bouncer to join us in the party over there. And of course, we'll be back next week with Vol Views. Got Mr. Jem Carson joining us again. You guys liked him last time. He asked to come back. He had a good time. So he said, you know what? You can join us in the MyAxe hot seat again next week. So it should be a good time next week. And Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks want to hit you up there on the old land of the pit, they want to talk ratio, put flies in UVXY, wherever floats their boat, where should they go? What should they do?
Come on over to optionpit.com, memberships. Right now, we do have a special where you can get the VIX Edge and my Vol Trade Club and VIX and VXX Made Easy on Mondays. It's a great deal as a bundle. Hop on over and Ted will give you a deal. You say you heard it all on the Option Pit Show. Learn how to trade volatility in a sustainable and longevity style way. It's 888-TRADE-01. Just ask for Ted or talk to Ted and say you heard it on the show, and he will give you a lovely deal on the bundle. So there you go. Surf on over to optionpit.com.
There you go. Get the bundle. Talk to Ted. He's the magic keeper of the bundle. I need a Ted. I need a nice Ted to say, hey, go talk to Ted. That'd be easier. So check out Ted over there in the land of the pit. Ours is all automated. You got to talk to the robos, of course. But if you want to head on over to learn more about spikes, V-spikes, all that good stuff, MyAxeOptions.com/spikes is the place to go to begin your journey. Remember, go to T3Index.com, the number 3, T3Index.com, if you want to check out the quotes for V-spikes. Again, I know some of you are having hard times finding those. And, of course, we'll be back a little less than an hour now to break down the world of unusual activity, and then back again next week, another episode of Volatility Views. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MyAxe, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MyAxe is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, Spike, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about spikes at MyAxeOptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.